माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीर वनचारी जय यमुना तीर वनचारी राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय, नरसिंह भगवान की जय, राधा माधव की जय, चढ़ गोस्वामी की जय, गुरु परंपरा की जय, गोपाल की हरि। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। So Hare Krishna, Prabhu's Mataji, welcome all of you for this Bhagavatam session. So today we'll be discussing from third canto, 25th chapter, verse number 17. So let us recite the verse. Tada Purusha Atmanam Kevalam Prakrite Param Nirantaram Swayam Jyotir Animanam Akhanditam. Tada Purusha Atmanam Kevalam Prakrite Param Nirantaram Swayam Jyotir Animanam Akhanditam. Tada Purusha Atmanam Kevalam Prakrite Param Nirantaram Swayam Jyotir Animanam Akhanditam. Anybody wants to recite? Yes, go ahead.
Tada Purushatmanam Tada Purusha Atmanam Kevalam
Not to be heard. This internet is on. Okay, it's okay. Let's go to the word meaning. Tada, then, Purushaha, the individual soul. Atmanam, himself. Kevalam, pure. Prakrite Param, transcendental to material existence. Nirantaram, non-different. Swayam Jyotihi, self-effulgent. Animanam, infinitesimal. Akhanditam, not fragmented. Translation by Bhatt. At that time, the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence and always self-effulgent, never fragmented, although very minute in size. Purport by Shiva Prabhupada Ki Jai. In the state of pure consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one can see himself as a minute particle, non-different from the Supreme Lord. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the jiva or the individual soul is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Just as the sun's rays are minute particles of the brilliant constitution of the sun, so a living entity is a minute particle of the Supreme Spirit. The individual soul and the Supreme Lord are not separated as in material differentiation. The individual soul is a particle from the very beginning. One should not think that because the individual soul is a particle, it is fragmented from the whole spirit. Mayavada philosophy enunciates that the whole spirit exists, but a part of it, which is called the jiva, is entrapped by illusion. This philosophy, however, is unacceptable because spirit cannot be divided like a fragment of matter. That part, the jiva, is eternally a part. As long as the Supreme Spirit exists, his part and parcel also exists. As long as the sun exists, the molecules of the sun's rays also exist. The jiva particle is estimated in the Vedic literature to be 1/10,000 the size of the upper portion of a hair. It is therefore infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is infinite, but the living entity or the individual soul is infinitesimal, although it is not different in quality from the Supreme Spirit. Two words in this verse are to be particularly noted. One is nirantaram, which means non-different or of the same quality. The individual soul is also expressed here as animanam. Animanam means infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is all-pervading, but the very small spirit is the individual soul. Akhanditam means not exactly fragmented, but constitutionally always infinitesimal. But, no one can separate the molecular parts of the sunshine from the sun. But at the same time, the molecular part of the sunshine is not as expansive as the sun itself. Similarly, the living entity, by its constitutional position, is qualitatively the same as the Supreme Spirit, but he is infinitesimal. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Om Gyanandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Parishta Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitanamane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachat Deshatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Yanta Pravishya Mamvacha Imam Prasuptam Sanjeevayati Akila Shakti Dharaswadamnam Anyam Sahasta Charana Shravanatvagadin Prana Namo Bhagavate Prashayatubhyam. Sorry, Krishna Bhus Matajis. So this chapter is entitled The Glories of Devotional Service. See, in the first verse, Shonaka is saying, although he is unborn, the Supreme Personality of Godhead took birth as Kapila Muni by his internal potency. So he descended to disseminate transcendental knowledge for the benefit of the whole human race. The second, he says, there is no one who knows more than the Lord himself. So no one is more worshipful or mature yogi than he. The third, he says, therefore, he's asking, please precisely describe all the activities and pastimes of the personality of Godhead. The Shonaka Muni is telling to Sutta Goswami. Now, Sutta Goswami is answering, the most powerful sage Maitreya was a friend of Vyasadeva. So being encouraged and pleased by Vidura's inquiry about transcendental knowledge, Maitreya spoke as follows. So Maitreya said, when Kardama Muni left for the forest, his son, Lord Kapila, stayed on the strand of the Bindu Sarovara to please his mother, Devavati. So when Kapila could show her ultimate goal of absolute truth, was sitting leisurely before her, Devavati remembered the words of Brahma had spoken to her, and she therefore began to question Kapila Muni. So Devavati said, 7th verse. See, this verse is very beautiful. See, this is like a question. It's actually she's asking on behalf of us. She says, I am very sick of the disturbance caused by the material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen to the abyss of ignorance. See, the purport, here the word Asad Indriya Tarshana is significant. Asat means impermanent, temporary, and Indriya means senses. Thus, Asad Indriya Tarshanat means from being agitated by the temporarily manifest senses of the material body. See, we are evolving through different status of material bodily existence. Sometimes in a human body, sometimes in an animal body. So therefore, the engagements of our material senses are also changing. So anything which changes is called temporary or asat. We should know that beyond these temporary senses are our permanent senses, which are now covered by the material body. The permanent senses being contaminated by matter are not acting properly. Devotional service therefore involves freeing the senses from this contamination. So when the contamination is completely removed and the senses act in purity of unalloyed Krishna consciousness, we have reached Sadindriya or eternal sensory activities. So eternal sensory activities are called devotional service, whereas temporary sensory activities are called sense gratification. Very nice point. So unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there is no opportunity to hear transcendental messages from a person like Kapila. So Devavati expressed that she was now tired. So now that her husband had left home, she wanted to get relief by hearing the instructions of Lord Kapila. See, and then she is asking, so please remove my ignorance. I am suffering because of this sense gratification and false ego. See, the 10th verse also, no, now this 10th verse is another beautiful thing to understand. Now she says, now be pleased, my Lord, to dispel my great delusion. Due to my feeling of false ego, I have been engaged by your Maya and have identified myself with the body and consequently bodily relations. This is another wonderful purport here. He is talking about the false ego of identifying one's body as oneself and of claiming things possessed in relation with this body is called Maya. That's why in Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter, Lord says, I am sitting in everyone's heart. From me come everyone's remembrance and forgetfulness. So Devavati has stated that false identification of the body with the self and attachment for possessions in relation to the body are also under the direction of the Lord. Now, does this mean that the Lord discriminates by engaging one in his devotional service and another in sense gratification? It's not true. It would be incongruity on the part of the Supreme Lord, but that is not the actual fact. So as soon as the living entity forgets his real constitutional position of eternal servitorship to the Lord and wants instead to enjoy himself by sense gratification, he is captured by Maya. So we are all under Maya if you are doing sense gratification. So this capture by Maya is the consciousness of false identification with the body and attachment for the possessions of the body. So these are the activities of Maya. And since Maya is also an agent of the Lord, it is indirectly the action of the Lord. See, the Lord is merciful. So if anyone wants to forget him and enjoy this material world, he gives him full facility. Not directly, but through the agency of his material potency. So therefore, since the material potency is the Lord's energy, indirectly it is the Lord who gives the facility to forget him. So Devavati therefore said, my engagement in sense gratification is also due to you. Now kindly get me free from this entanglement. So here Prabhupada says, by the grace of the Lord, one is allowed to enjoy this material world. But when one is disgusted with material enjoyment and is frustrated, and when one sincerely surrenders under the lotus feet of the Lord, then the Lord is so kind that he frees one from entanglement. Very nice point, right? By the grace of one, when one is, see, one is allowed to enjoy the material world. But this point is very important. When one is disgusted with material enjoyment and is frustrated, and then sincerely surrenders under the lotus feet of the Lord, then the Lord is so kind that he frees one from entanglement. So we should introspect ourselves. Are we disgusted with the real world or getting frustrated? We are still happy, we want trying to find happiness in this material world. So therefore, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, first of all, surrender. Then I will take charge of you and free you from all reactions of sinful activities. So sinful activities are those activities performed in forgetfulness of our relationship with the Lord. So anyway, sinful activities, you are forgetting the Lord. So in this material world, activities for material enjoyment which are considered to be pious are also sinful. For example, one sometimes gives something in charity to a needy person with a view to getting back the money 4 times increased. So giving with the purpose of gaining something is called charity in the mode of passion. So everything done here is done in the modes of material nature. Therefore, all activities but service to the Lord are sinful. Now, because of sinful activities, we become attracted by the illusion of material attachment. And we think, I am this body. I think of the body as myself and of bodily possessions as mine. So Devati requested Lord Kapila to free her from that entanglement of false identification and false possession. So these are all the very important points, which, so this chapter, the glories of devotional service. See, as we talked about surrender, right, in this one, Krishna is telling, if you surrender, Sarva Dharman Paritteja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja, Aham Tvam Sarvapapebhyo Mokshayashami Ma Sucha. The reason why we are unable to surrender to the Lord, what is the reason? Because we do not appreciate the transcendental nature of the Lord. And that is why our surrender is always conditioned or incomplete. See, to understand this transcendental nature of the Lord, we must carve in our minds 3 verses. First one is the description of Krishna as the original person, Adi Deva. So Bhagavad Gita 11.38 gives this. Tumadi Deva Purusha Puranas Tamasya Vishwasya Param Nidanam Vittasi Vedyam Cha Param Cha Dhama Tvaya Tatam Vishwamanantarupa. You are the original personality of Godhead, the oldest, the ultimate sanctuary of the manifested cosmic world. You are the knower of everything, and you are all that is knowable. You are the supreme refuge above the material moods. Whole limitless form, this whole cosmic manifestation is pervaded by you. So to understand Krishna as Adideva, the original personality of Godhead, we must go to Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the postgraduate study of Bhagavad Gita. See, Bhagavad Gita has given the root that he is the original person. So how he is original is described in 2.9.33. One of the seed verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, 2.9.33. Aham evasame nanyadhyat sadasat param paschadaham yadetascha yo shishyesta sosmiham. Brahma, it is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but myself. Nor was there the material nature, the cause of this creation. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead. And after annihilation, what remains will also be I, the personality of God. So not only is the Lord original, but he is complete. Because nothing can be taken out from him, and nothing can be added to him. And this completeness of the Lord is described in the invocation of Ishopanishad. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. This translation is so beautiful. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete. And because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself. Now, because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. So these 3 verses should force us to be very humble. See, really, we do not have any value. Because of the false ego, right? We think that we are all in all. Our position is null and void. Nothing we can create. Nothing we can enjoy. See, we remember CNN. We are not capable, we are nothing, and we are not needed. So nothing except to recognize the authority, the Adideva. Except that we cannot do anything in this yoni. See, all of the species of life are completely in dark. See, they do not have any idea of the metaphysical side of the existence, right? So, but in this yoni only, Krishna's mercy, he has given some special understanding to us. See, in between the ignorance of the childhood and old age, we have some intelligence. So in this yoni also, the child has no intelligence at all. So when he gets into around 15, 16 years, he will slowly start thinking. Then again, the youth and the middle age passes. And in old age, we do not know whether the consciousness remains pure or not. And again, we forget. So only in the in-between years, we are given the special facility. So how much important it is to understand this and try to remember. So we should continuously study and refer Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. The more you read, you will be able to refer because the same principles are described everywhere. It's not anything else. It's all in one. It's all one, right? So that is why our continuous thinking must be in these lines, whereas our thinking is completely haywire. We do not know what we are thinking. Actually, as soon as you stop thinking about Krishna means you'll be thinking of material matter. That is definite. So thinking will go on, and that is the nature of the mind. So we are given the special facility in this species of existence. And we are the luckiest persons to come under the shelter of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada has made everything very clear. Without his mercy, we will never even know these verses. But Prabhupada has made everything very clear. Now, because we do not understand Krishna, that is why we do not have the attraction. Rati, we don't have the attraction. We are still not attracted to Krishna. That is why we are beating about the bush. See, all these pages of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, they force us to get attracted to Krishna. See, in any condition of life, three things are vital. One, you have to have attraction to the transcendence. Two, you have to understand it through the pages of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. And three, you must be seriously inquisitive. As Prabhupada writes in the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam 1, 2, 12, very wonderful. This purport is very useful for all of us to understand. See, devotional service, which is based on the foreground of full knowledge, combined with detachment from mental association, and which is fixed by the oral reception of the Vedanta Shruti, is the only perfect method by which the seriously inquisitive student can realize the absolute truth. That's why in the 11th verse, 325:11, no, this desire to know is described as jigyasayaham. The seriously inquisitive nature is absent. That is why, see, out of the 24 hours a day, 23 hours, 23.5 hours will go in nonsense. And what is done in that 23.5 hours, in fact, could be done in half an hour. That is the capacity we all have. That is why we have this voluntary retirement scheme, right? Either you will voluntarily retire or you'll be forced or kicked. Anyway, you have to retire. So that should be regarded as a special prerogative offered by Krishna. See, by investing that time in Bhagavatam, we learn so many things. See, the necessity of developing the seriously inquisitive nature regarding spiritual matters, right, is very important. And for this, that lethargy has to be driven away. Laziness is very easy to conquer, but we do not want to really conquer. The intense desire is not there. And to have the intense desire to conquer the laziness, the practical thing has to be seen. See, the day is bound to come when our eyes will not open, we cannot hear anything. We should get more attached to Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and everything spiritual before the body fails. Bhagavatam instructs us, Turnam yatet na patet anu mrityu yavat. A sober human being should quickly endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life as long as his body, which is always subject to death, has not fallen down and died. See, we are not the cause of mental activities. They happen. What do? Krishna supplies everything, and we forget the original source. This is our condition. And in all the material matters, we cannot do anything unless Krishna does. There is no way we can arrange without his mercy. But even then, we put ourselves in the forefront. It is gross ignorance not to think, I do. See, the bullock cart is driven by the bullock. The dog comes in between the bullock and thinks he is pulling the cart. So what we should invest our energy in Bhagavatam. That energy will multiply and it will spread everywhere. See, there are innumerable verses in Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. When you open, no, it is all Krishna. And that is why it is non-different from Krishna. There are only two things in scriptures. One is instructions about correcting our contaminated behavior. And the other thing is transcendence. There is nothing else in the scriptures. See, all different episodes, pastimes are there to correct our contaminated behavior. How the behavior pattern should be there for Krishna conscious person is explained. And with that behavior only you can enter into the transcendence. That's it. See, for the last so many years, we are discussing Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. Even now, if we do not touch the purity, then what are we discussing daily? Day in and day out, we have to be on our guard and maintain the purity in behavior. See, we may suggest something, but nobody is going to guard you. And you must be on self-guard. See, we should correct our behavior pattern. purity in our behavior is a must. The confidential thing about purity is that the more purity you have, the more things will be arranged according to your wish. Purity must be there. See, we do not have to do anything. Krishna will arrange. We are in the material world and we have our responsibilities. But there is a shortcut way to complete the responsibilities. And that is to understand and observe purity in our behavior. The behavior pattern must be crystal clear. Nobody should doubt us. See, once you shut your eyes from that contamination, then everything becomes very transcendental. Your responsibilities are taken care of. Krishna is carrying on anyway. See, what are we doing? Children are there, grandchildren are there, they are growing, studying, working. What are we doing anyway? We catch our heads and think, oh, what happened to them? There is no end to this. We cannot do anything. And unnecessarily we catch our head and that should stop. Contamination in behavior should not be there. The reason we are running here and there is because we have not come to Sharanyam Sharanyam. We must first find out our Sharanyam, or the living entity who is worth taking shelter. And then there is surrender. Sharanam. But we do not find Sharanyam, right? Till that time we are kicked out. Because we are not going to transcendence, which is worth taking shelter of, we are going to that which is not worth taking shelter of. So if we go to the wrong Sharanyam, we are going to be kicked. So those who choose this correctly, their position is secure. Srila Prabhupada, when he went to America, he did not have anything at all. When he got down from the ship, he did not know where to go. But he could achieve so much because Sharanyam was there. His surrender was complete. To what did Srila Prabhupada surrender? We think that he surrendered to Krishna. But if you really seriously think, he was surrendered to Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is why he took a vow to translate the whole thing before he dies. So that Srimad Bhagavatam we kick out and our Sharanyam is gone. We surrender to so many people at work, at home, and serve them. We should do our service. We should do our service. But rest of the time, everybody should know and see that we are with Bhagavatam. That will protect you. So unless Sharanam is there, the axe is not there. To cut the tree of material life or samsara, the axe is required. So when correct surrender is there, automatically axe will be there. So we are situated in samsara. Even then we are not attached. That is the secret in devotional service. So once axe is there, jigyasa is there, inquisitive. So that is inquisitive to know Krishna. So till that time you are not sincerely inquisitive of Atma Tattva, till that time you are defeated. But those who are attached to Bhagavatam are not attached to temporary things and relationships. So being attached to Srimad Bhagavatam, this is Sharanam Sharanyam. Surrender to that which is worth taking shelter of. See, in our life, we have so many necessities. Own house, good job, salary, good education to children, so on and so forth. But as regards the spiritual existence, which is the vital force of the living entity, we don't give so much necessary attention in spite of hearing so many instructions. We cling onto the material possessions, and even though we know that it is destructive, Nashwaram, still we don't want to give up. Tesham pramatta nidanam pashyam api na pashyati. Even though we see the inevitable destruction of material education, still we do not see the reality. So this does not mean that we should stop the endeavor. See, unless there is a continuous flow of Lakshmi, it's not possible to sit peacefully and understand the transcendence, right? So balance must be maintained between our material and spiritual life. It's very important that along with the material education, we give the importance of spiritual existence to our children and its permanence again and again, so that they don't get bogged down by the unsurpassable forces of material nature, which always results in failures. So it is very important and urgent to inculcate the spiritual necessities in both our existence and our children's existence. Otherwise, the Lakshmi and education we give will destroy them. So the ethical and moral values of spiritual existence must be injected forcibly so that they don't deviate from it. and they are completely under the protection of the safe lotus feet of the Lord. Prabhupada, being Amoghadrik, no perfect seer, he emphasized this point of transcendental necessities very wonderfully in the purport of 325:12. He said, Devotee has surrendered a confession of material entanglement and a desire to gain release. Her questions to Lord Kapila are very interesting for persons who are actually trying to get liberation from material entanglement and attain the perfectional stage of human life. That's what it is in the 12th verse. Unless one is interested in understanding his spiritual life or his constitutional position, and unless he also feels inconvenience in material existence, his human form of life is spoiled. One who does not care for these transcendental necessities of life and is simply engages in like an animal in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating, has spoiled his life. So Prabhupada gives three important things required to understand the transcendental necessities of life. One, unless one is interested in understanding his spiritual life or his constitutional position, his human life is spoiled. Two, unless he also feels inconvenience in mental existence, his human form of life is spoiled. And third, one who does not care for these transcendental necessities of life and simply engages in the animal, like an animal in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating, has spoiled his life. So as far as the first point is concerned, we all started developing interest to understand our spiritual life as we began this process. But it's important to constantly rekindle this urge to understand our constitutional position as the eternal servants of the Supreme Lord by the process of chanting, study of scriptures, and service to the Vaishnavas. And for the second and third points, both are interlinked with each other. See, most of us feel inconvenience in material existence, but we plan and scheme ways to mitigate those inconveniences with material solutions so that we get rid of those inconveniences. That's all. This is where we are failing miserably. And that is the reason we are not feeling the importance of the transcendental necessities for getting out of the entanglement of material existence. Most of us are neither feeling it as an urgency or as a necessity. We are thinking that we should care for these transcendental necessities once we settle down in our material life or once we retire from material life. Both the cases will never happen. Settling down in material life is impossible. As material life means misery. It's bound to come as certified by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita. See, as regards retirement from material life also means we are coming into our waning years, where our bodily facilities or faculties are slowly but steadily succumbing to the force of time. See, in old age, the bodily activities will consume a lot of time. And there will be no time for satisfying our transcendental spiritual necessities like chanting, reading, hearing, and doing serious devotional service. So it is incumbent upon us to start the serious devotional service right now and understand the transcendental necessities instead of waiting till our old age. Kurukshetkar Alvar in Mukundamala Stotra, he reveals the reality of our life, which has been so often repeated by Srila Prabhupada in his various classes. Krishna Tvadiya Padapankaja Panjaratnam Adyaiva Vishatu Manasaraja Hamsaha Pranapana Samaye Kapavata Pittaihi Kanta Varadhona Vidho Smaranam Kutaste. He says, my Lord Krishna, I pray that the swan of my mind may immediately sink down to the stems of the lotus feet of your Lordship and be locked in their network. Otherwise, at the time of my final breath, when my throat is choked with cough, how will it be possible to think of you? So Prabhupada calls it as transcendental necessities. What a wonderful statement. Transcendental necessities. Because it is the only way to transcend us from the material existence to the permanent state of bliss without anxiety. Vaikuntha. So let us all pray to Guru, Prabhupada, and Krishna to shower their costless mercy so that we can feel the urgency of taking up these transcendental necessities quickly without wasting any more time in frivolous material over endeavors. See, the laws of karma are inexorable. And as conditioned souls, we can experience it in the form of happiness and distress, which are caused respectively due to pious and sinful activities. See, in general, any happiness we get in the middle world is always attached to some difficulties which come along with it, unwarranted. See, we don't want heat, we don't want cold, but it comes, right? Our tendency is to get the happiness alone. We want only happiness and avoid the associated difficulties by using our intelligence to forget the difficulties and get used to it. See how powerful our intelligence is, how far it may be. The difficulties will come either in this life or the next, for whatever enjoyment we do. So, a genuine religion will never try to put an end to the difficulties alone and ensure happiness to the followers. See, in Kali Yuga, there is so much propaganda by the politicians and religionists, right? That one can avoid all miseries, get only happiness in this middle life alone without any spiritual touch. No, not possible. It is not possible. A genuine religion will put an end to both happiness and distress caused by material means and awaken the inherent bliss of the self, which is a result of serving the Supreme Lord. So this is confirmed in the 13th verse. Lord Kapila is teaching in 3:25-13. He says, yoga system which relates to the Lord and the individual soul, which is meant for the ultimate benefit of the living entity, which causes detachment from all happiness and distress in the middle world, is the highest yoga system. So in the middle world, one can have unlimited happiness. So any kind of happiness one has is contaminated by distress also. For example, if you want to drink milk, then we have to bother to maintain a cow and keep her fit to supply milk. Drinking milk is very nice. It is also a pleasure. But for the sake of drinking milk, one has to accept so much trouble. So the yoga system, as stated by the Lord, is meant to end all the material happiness and material distress. So we cannot see a person without any misery. Everyone has their own quota of problems and shortcomings. See, all the endeavor in this middle world is to eliminate the miseries. But miseries can be stopped only if we are ready to give up the happiness also derived by the middle contact. And this is also confirmed in the Vedas. It says, when a person perceives the Supreme Lord, he gets rid of both pious reactions, which gives happiness, and sinful reactions, which gives miseries, and attains almost similarity with the Lord. So when a person practices spiritual life in the advanced stages of his devotion, not only his impious actions, but his pious actions are also burnt up by the power of bhakti. Only then he becomes eligible for reaching the Lord. See, in the beginning stage of devotion, we are encouraged to perform bhakti with the understanding that bhakti destroys all sinful reactions and reduces miseries. The fact is that bhakti destroys all the pious reactions also, thereby reducing the so-called happiness and its connected miseries. So the happiness one derives in bhakti is completely different from what we get in this world. That's why, see, the 14th, is telling, no, my pious mother, I shall now explain to you the yoga system, which I explained formally to these great sages. It is serviceable and practical in every way. The 15th, he says, Kapila is telling to Devati Mata, the stage in which the consciousness of the living entity is attracted to the three modes of middle nature is called conditional life. But when that consciousness is attached to Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is situated in the consciousness of liberation. In the 16th, he says, when one is completely cleansed by the impurities of lust and greed, produced from the false identification of the body as I and bodily possession as mine, one's mind becomes purified. In that pure state, it transcends the stage of so-called material happiness and distress. Then we come to this current verse, where it is said, at that time, when everything is clear, the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence and always self-effulgent, never fragmented, although very minute in size. So this is, so in the translation it says, so now see, the forgetful living entity can be compared to a man who is under the influence of the disease and has become mad or man haunted by ghosts, who acts without control and yet thinks himself to be in control. See, under the influence of material nature, the conditioned soul becomes absorbed in material consciousness. And in this consciousness, whatever is done under the influence of material energy is accepted by the conditioned soul as self. That I have done. Actually, the soul in its pure state of existence should be in Krishna consciousness. When a person is not acting in Krishna consciousness, he is understood to be acting in material consciousness. See, consciousness cannot be killed because the symptom of the living entity is consciousness. Material consciousness simply has to be purified. One becomes liberated by accepting Krishna as a master and by changing the mode of consciousness from material consciousness to Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, you are Pati consciousness, Patni consciousness, bank balance consciousness, all these consciousness. You have to have Krishna consciousness. So the pure state of consciousness, that is Krishna consciousness, exists in the beginning, just after creation. See, consciousness is not polluted. The more one becomes materially contaminated, more consciousness becomes obscured. So in pure consciousness, one can perceive a slight reflection of Supreme Personality of Godhead. See, when the rain comes from the top, it's very pure. The moment it touches the ground, it gets contaminated. See, unagitated water, as in a clear, unagitated water, which is free from impurities, one can see everything clearly. So in pure consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one can see things as they are. One can see the reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And one can see his, his own existence as well. So this state of consciousness is very pleasing, transparent and sober, So in the beginning, consciousness is pure. So from clear consciousness or the pure state of Krishna consciousness, in the beginning, the first contamination sprang up. And this is called false ego or identification of the body as self. We think I am the body. So the living entity exists in the natural state of Krishna consciousness, but yes, marginal independence has been given by Krishna. And this allows him to forget Krishna. See, originally, pure Krishna consciousness exists. Sorry. But because of misuse of that marginal independence, there is a chance of forgetting Krishna. And this is exhibited in actual life. There are many instances in which someone acting in Krishna consciousness suddenly changes. So in the Upanishad, it is therefore stated, the path of spiritual realization is just like the sharp edge of a razor. See, example is very appropriate. One shaves his cheeks with a sharp razor very nicely. But as soon as his attention is diverted from the activity, he immediately cuts his cheek because he mishandles the razor. So not only must one come to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness, but one must also be very careful. Any inattentiveness or carelessness may cause fall down. And this fall down is due to false ego. So from the status of pure consciousness, the false ego is born because of misuse of independence. So we cannot argue about why false ego arises from pure consciousness. If actually there is always the chance that this will happen. Therefore, one has to be very careful. False ego is the basic principle for all material activities, which are executed in the mode of material nature. See, as soon as one deviates from the pure Krishna consciousness, he increases his entanglement material reaction. The entanglement of materialism is the material mind, and from this material mind, the senses and material organs become manifest. You see, the purport of 3:27:25, Prabhupada writes, in the condition of dreaming, when one's consciousness is almost covered, one may see many unfavorable things which cause disturbance or anxiety. But upon awakening, although he remembers what happened in the dream, he is not disturbed. Understood? So similarly, the position of self-realization or understanding of one's real relationship with the Supreme Lord makes one completely satisfied. And the three modes of material nature, which are the cause of all disturbances, cannot affect him. So in contaminated consciousness, one sees everything to be for his own enjoyment. But in pure consciousness, Krishna consciousness, he sees that everything exists for the enjoyment of the supreme enjoyer. So that is the difference between the dream state and wakefulness. The state of contaminated consciousness is compared to dream consciousness. And Krishna consciousness is compared to the awakened stage of life. Actually, as it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, the only absolute enjoyer is Krishna. One who can understand that Krishna is the proprietor of all three worlds and that he is the friend of everyone is peaceful and independent. As long as conditioned soul does not have this knowledge, he wants to be the enjoyer of everything. That's what we are doing, right? He wants to become a humanitarian, philanthropist, open hospitals, schools for his fellow human beings. This, Prabhupada writes, this is all illusion. for one cannot benefit anyone by such mental activities. And he says, if one wishes to benefit his fellow brother, he must awaken his dormant Krishna consciousness. He can do all these activities, but please awaken his dormant Krishna consciousness. So the Krishna conscious position is that of Pratibuddha, which means pure consciousness. See, 11:28, 11 purport says, fire can never be covered with darkness, because by nature fire is illuminating. Similarly, the spirit soul, as Swayam Jyotihi, or self-luminous. So the soul is transcendental. It can never be covered by the darkness of material life. On the other hand, the material body, like firewood, is by nature dull and unilluminated. See, in itself, it does not have any awareness of life. If the soul is transcendental to material life, and the body is not even conscious of it, a question arises. Prabhupada says, how does our experience of material existence actually take place? In the next 12th verse, he says, see, Prabhupada, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, as long as the foolish spirit soul remains attracted to the material body, material senses, and vital force, his mental existence continues to flourish, although it is ultimately meaningless. The pure spirit soul voluntarily connects himself with the material body. Considering this most fruitful arrangement, actually the situation is useless unless one uses one's embodied situation to engage in the loving service of the Lord. So at that time, one's connection is actually with Lord Krishna, not with the body, because which becomes a mere instrument for executing one's higher purpose. Correct? His body is basically is an instrument to do devotional service. See, actually, the living entity is transcendental to mental existence. But because of his mentality of lording over material nature, his mental existence condition does not cease. And just as in the dream, it's affected by all sorts of disadvantages. See, although while dreaming, a person experiences many undesirable things. But upon awakening, he is no longer confused by the dream experiences. See, even a liberated soul must observe material objects while living in this world. But being awake to Krishna consciousness, he understands that sensory pains and pleasures like dreams are without substance. Thus, the liberated soul is not bewildered by illusion. See, they are living in this material world. Everything is around, but they're not bewildered. See, lamentation, in the 11:28, 15th verse, translation says, lamentation, elation, fear, anger, greed, confusion, and hankering, as well as birth and death, are experiences of the false ego and not of the pure soul. The false ego is a pure soul's illusory identification with the subtle material mind and gross material body. And as a result of this illusory identification, the conditioned soul feels lamentation for things lost, jubilation over things gained, fear of things inauspicious, anger at the frustration of his desires, and greed for sense gratification. And so bewildered by such false attraction and aversions, the conditioned soul must accept further material bodies, which means he must undergo repeated births and deaths. So one who is self-realized knows that all such mundane emotions have nothing to do with the pure soul, whose natural propensity is to engage in the loving service of the Lord. In the 16th verse, he says, the living entity who falsely identifies with his body, senses, life, air, and mind, and who dwells within these coverings, assumes the form of his own material condition, qualities, and work. So he is designated variously in relation to the total material energy. Thus, under the strict control of the supreme time, he is forced to run here and there within material existence. He's talking about false ego. False ego, which causes the living entity to suffer material existence, is described as the illusory identification of the material body. See, the word kala, that is time, the Supreme Court, he imposes the limiting segments of time upon the conditioned souls, keeping them tightly bound under the laws of nature. See, liberation is not an impersonal experience. Liberation is attainment of one's eternal body, senses, mind, and religion, the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We can revive our eternal liberated personality, free from contamination of false ego. How? By dedicating ourselves to the loving service of the Lord in Krishna consciousness. So when the pure soul accepts the false ego, he must undergo material suffering. one automatically conquers the false ego by accepting oneself in pure Krishna consciousness to be the eternal servant of Lord Krishna. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the original source of everything. So by expanding his internal potency, he manifests the spiritual world. And by expanding his external potency, he manifests the material cosmos. Now, the conditioned living entity is originally part and parcel of the superior internal potency of the Lord. But being in contact with illusion, he falls under the clutches of the external potency. So in any case, since everything is an expansion of the potency of the Supreme Brahman, everything is part and parcel of the Lord's spiritual potency. So when a living entity thinks that the material world is not part and parcel of the Lord's potency, but its separate existence is liable to be controlled and enjoyed by the tiny jiva soul, he is under wrong conception. So living entity forgets that the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of everything, and everything being an expansion of the Lord. That's why Srila Sridhara Swami has pointed out that although the Lord's external potency is subject to transformations such as birth, growth, decay, and death, one should not foolishly conclude that the Lord's internal potency, the living entity, is also subject to these changes. No. See, both the living entity and the material nature are ultimately Brahman, being expansions of the Supreme Brahman. But the Vedas clearly say they are multifarious potencies. So the soul is never born, nor does it die, and it certainly cannot grow or decay like a material body. So although the visible material body passes through boyhood, adolescence, and old age, although one may take birth as a demigod, human being, plant, or animal, the spirit soul never changes his eternal constitutional position. Rather, he falsely identifies with the external transformation of the material body, thus imposes upon himself a psychological condition called illusion. So this miserable illusory experience of seeing oneself transformed and ultimately annihilated by the loss of material nature can be nullified by transcendental knowledge of one's eternal status as a superior energy of the Lord. That's what Prabhupada is telling in this purpose. So this is very, very important for us to understand. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura says that instead of wasting time trying to understand the truth in its impersonal aspect, which is merely the negation of temporary material variety, one should try to understand oneself to be an eternally conscious entity in the Jiva category. In other words, one should understand oneself to be eternally a conscious servitor of the Supreme Personality of God. So in this regard, Srila Madhavacharya has quoted a statement from Moksha Dharma section of Mahabharata, where he says, the living entity known as Jiva is not different from me, for he is my expansion. Thus, the living entity is eternal as I am, and always exists within me. But you should not artificially think, now I have seen the soul. Rather, I, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will bestow this benediction upon you when you are actually qualified. So these are all the interesting things. And finally, see, the purport of the current verse, 17th verse, Prabhupada says, the Supreme Spirit is all-pervading. But the very small spirit is the individual soul. He gave the size, 1/10,000 the size of the upper portion of the hair. That is the size of the Atma, soul. So no one. So the Supreme Spirit all-pervading, but very small spirit is the individual soul. And the word akhanditam means not exactly fragmented, but constitutionally always infinitesimal. Very, very small, very small. So no one can separate the molecular parts of the sunshine from the sun. At the same time, the molecular part of the sunshine is not as expansive as the sun itself. So Prabhupada finally says, similarly, the living entity, by his constitutional position, is qualitatively the same as the Supreme Spirit, but he is infinitesimal. See, qualitatively they are one, but quantitatively, very vast difference. So this is what. So this chapter is the glories of devotional service, and Devati Mata is asking questions to her son Kapila Muni, who is none other than the Supreme Lord, and is giving wonderful answers. So this is one of the lessons we can take from this verse. So we can stop here. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you. Thank you for the courage. Mancha Kalpadurvis Kripa Sindhuvecha Patidananda. So Hare Krishna, thank you for joining and giving me this opportunity to glorify the Lord. If you have any questions, anything to share, you can do that. Hare Krishna. Okay.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Sandhaguru Prabhu.
Prabhu, a wonderful class today, very explanative, very, very important.
Yes,
Very
yes, very
nicely
important.
explained. Very nicely
Thank you.
explained. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Gurudev ki jai, Shri Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandas Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you for the wonderful session today, Prabhuji. Now, Prabhuji, recently we have been seeing one thing. Kids students who are studying in this IIT Bombay, Madras, they are committing suicides.
Yes.
They don't understand the concept of whatever we have spoken today, like material body doesn't give happiness and all of that. So, and we see them as the best of the best institutes. IIT Bombay and Madras is not a small institute. Still, a lot of students are committing suicides.
True. Yes, Prabhu.
How can we avoid this?
Yeah. See, now this current people around nowadays is basically competition, right? Who is the best? I'm the best. I'm the best. There is a race going on. So everybody is wanting to have success. That's it. So nobody is teaching them. Everybody is teaching them how to be successful in this life. We are motivational speakers, so many other things, motivating them do best in this, best in that. Then even in the Olympics or anywhere, only studies, IIT as you correctly pointed out, everybody is talking about success. Nobody talks about how to deal with failures. And that can be, you can get only through the Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. That is the main, unless you have the spirit. See, materially everything, it is nashwaram, it is temporary. Even in the success, some people get success. That is also temporary. If it doesn't, in fact, in the failure, that is also temporary. See, everything in the middle is temporary. That is a good thing, right? If nothing gets sustained. So this, we say, this too shall pass. Correct? Like summer comes, then the winter, then rain, and all these things coming and going. It's not it is summer is throughout summer only. No. So that means you have success, you have failures, everything. But the point is, people are so much into that rat race, of being about successes. Without 100%, without 99.99%, even the education, cutoff is 99.9%, 95. All 90, all 90. What people will do with 70 and all. But in fact, those people are more happier. So this top level, this competition is given. So without this, your whole life is a failure. That's what you feel to that extent. And you cannot take that failure because of the society. People around will say, you're talking of so many things, what happened? So you cannot take it. And then that's why people are committing suicide and all. How see this human form of life has been given by after so many 84 lakh species. We have gone around how many times we don't know. And we got this human form. And just because of not being successful in the material world, you're not able to take the failures. And you leave this life. That means you have to take another body. It may be a human body, maybe, yeah, I don't know. So we have to, that's what best thing to give to people around this time is Krishna consciousness. They might be doing all the material activities, but add Krishna into your life. Then you will be able to maintain your status quo. You can take the failures also. So teaching success is already there. Now success is the basic thing. But how to handle failures. In fact, failures is a stepping stone to success. That is only a quote we are saying. But we don't take, actually when you fail, you can understand why I failed. You try to analyze those things, then you can improve yourself. Whatever mistakes I have done, can take care of that the next stage. So this is how we should be aware. So this awareness has to be created. And of course, it is the responsibility of people who are hearing Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita to share this. That's why I think nowadays there are classes going on even in NITs, IITs and all. They are taking classes, but the people, because of they think that these transcendental things are only for people above 60 and all. It's not so. How you don't know how much life you will live also, whether you'll be there till 60, right, when you retire. So this is a basic point, basically. How to handle fears is what is the most important thing to be taught. And that can be taught only by giving Krishna to everybody. Hare Krishna. Hope I was able to be of some useful.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. So if anything else, nothing is there, can we close, Prabhu? Hare Krishna. Thank you, Gitanjali Mataji. Hare Krishna. Milani Mataji, Swanta Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you, Sadhu Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, dear
Thank you.
devotees. We'll see you all tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Revati Prabhu, for giving this opportunity. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.